This story time is about how my best friend almost got kidnapped. This story time is why I stopped being friends with a girl because her dad was a pervert.
Story time of when my best friend set me up to get sexually assaulted.
This story time is about how my best friend almost got kidnapped. By the way, we're calling her Aaliyah. So back in the summer, Aaliyah was talking to a guy she met through Instagram, and she was talking to him for about 2 months, but they never actually met up. Aaliyah really liked him, and they planned a day when and where they go out to meet. The guy she was talking to asked if she wanted to come over to his house to chill. By the way, we're calling him Isaiah. And he wasn't far, so Aaliyah came to me and asked if I wanted to come with her. And I couldn't have her go alone if she was nervous, so I told her I'd go. So the day come and we go around 7, 8 o'clock. When we get to Isaiah's house, he welcomes us in. And when we walked into the living room, there were like 20 guys all around his house. We're so confused because Isaiah never mentioned that there would be other company. We sat down on his couch and everything was fine. We played games with everyone, which was pretty chill, until one of Isaiah's friends sat next to me and rubbed on my leg and asked me to come upstairs with him and another guy. It gets really crazy after this. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. This is part 2 of how my best friend almost got us kidnapped. So after we get to Isaiah's house, there's like 20 guys walking around his place. We start playing games, and I say after 2 hours, one of Isaiah's friends sit next to me and rubbed my legs and asked me to come upstairs with him and another guy. I immediately push him and told him to stop touching me. He gets up and grits me up like I'm some sort of rag doll, saying I disrespected him. And my body just reacted, so I slapped him in the face. My friend Aaliyah gets up and kicks him and tells him to get away. He got mad and walked away and told other guys in the room that we were weird. I was so mad, and I told Aaliyah I was ready to go and that everyone is acting sus. She says okay, so Aaliyah walks to Isaiah and she tells him we're about to go. He asks her for what, and she explains that I feel uncomfortable. He laughs and says that we're not going anywhere and that him and his boys were getting laid tonight. Y'all let me know if y'all want a part 3. This is part 3 of how my best friend almost got us kidnapped. So Aaliyah tells Isaiah that we're ready to go, and he basically said that we can't leave and that him and his friends were getting laid tonight. Aaliyah says, well, you better call up some hoes because we're leaving. So we gathered up our things and tried to walk out, and Isaiah yanked Aaliyah's leg, and when she fell, Isaiah jumped on top of her saying that we can't go anywhere, and all the guys start crowding around us. So I kicked Isaiah in the head and pulled Aaliyah up to go, and she's like, run. So we're running, and a couple of guys start chasing after us. One of them were really fast and catches up to us. He picks me up and starts taking me back to Isaiah's house, and I'm sitting there punching and kicking and screaming. That's all the time I have. Let me know if you guys want a part 4. This is part 4 of how my best friend almost got us kidnapped. Like I said earlier, we ran out of Isaiah's house and one of the guys picked me up and tried to take me back to his house. I don't know what else to do, so I scratched his face and he dropped me. Aaliyah pulls out her taser and tries to tase him. There were other guys that were running up to us, and Aaliyah let it be known that if they got any closer that she was going to try to tase them. When they finally decided to leave us alone, they were telling us we were weird, ugly, calling us out of our names, and just being rude and just saying rude stuff. But we ran home. When we finally got back to Aaliyah's house, she was so mad because she thought Isaiah was going to be a good guy. She was upset that happened. So she made a plan to get back at them. She made an anonymous call to the police saying that Isaiah's house was filled up with drugs, saying that they had weed and cocaine in the floorboards and in the walls. She gave them the address and everything. And that was the end of it. But I wonder how crazy Isaiah's house looks now. This story time is why I stopped being friends with a girl because her dad was a pervert. And we're calling her Kim. So me and Kim became friends at school. Over time, we realized we lived close together, so she started coming over to my house and I started going over to hers. She had 5 brothers and she was the only girl. Whenever I'd come over to her house, I'd say hello to everyone, but her dad was always excited to see me. He'd immediately run and give me a hug. Over the past couple months, he'd give me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. He said that I was his new little girl. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I went and told my friend Kim, and she said, he's just glad you're here, and you're like family now. I was like, okay, I guess, and I would just ignore it. Thanksgiving come up, and I went over to her house for a plate. Her dad opened up the door and gave me a hug and a kiss, as usual. I walked in the house, and he said, you need to eat to keep that booty plump. I laughed in nervousness, and he slapped and squeezed my butt. There's more that happened after this. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. This is part 2 of why I stopped being friends with the girl because her dad was a pervert. So remember how I told y'all I came over for Thanksgiving? Her dad slapped and squeezed my butt. I was weirded out, but I laughed to hide how nervous and anxious I was. After I get a plate of food and I sit down with Kim, I told her dad slapped my butt. And she was like, yeah, okay, as if she didn't believe me. So again, I ignored the situation. As the day goes on, everyone is playing board games, laughing, and eating desserts. I had cheesecake and I'm lactose intolerant, and you know how that went. I left the family for a few minutes and I go to the bathroom. When I was all finished, I opened up the door and there was Kim's dad just sitting there smiling at me. I was like, oops, my bad. You were probably waiting for a while. Here you go. And I tried to move out of the way, but then he says, I don't need to go to the bathroom. He pushes me back in by the hips and locks the door. It gets really bad after this. Y'all let me know if I should make a part 3. This is part 3 of why I stopped being friends with the girl because her dad was a pervert. So after her dad pushes me back into the bathroom and locks the door, he's sitting there smiling at me, and I asked him very nervously if I did something wrong. He was like, yes, you haven't been spending time with daddy, and he likes to jiggle my breasts in a weird way. At this point, I was backing up because he starts acting weird. Then he starts unzipping his pants and gets closer to me. And guys, their bathroom wasn't that big. I immediately took the Windex that was on top of their toilet and sprayed it into his eyes and quickly ran out of the bathroom. After this, her dad starts yelling. While I'm coming downstairs, everyone asks what's going on. I told the whole family what Kim dad has done, and one of their little brothers yells at me, calling me a whore. I then went to Kim saying, you gotta believe me, that's what happened. She's like, my dad would never do anything like that. Her mom walks up to me and tells me that I should leave. I start crying, and then her mom yells at me and tells me to go home. So I left and went home crying. After that, I never went back over to her house.
Toxic best friend story time. My best friend's name was Jessica, and she was from Pennsylvania, and she was from a broken home. And when she met my mom, she absolutely loved my mom, and we became fast friends really quick. She always wanted to come over to my house, and when I didn't want her to come over for some reason because I wanted to be with my family, she would get really upset. She became really possessive over me with my family and other people at school, so I basically couldn't have any other friends except for her. And when she would see me hang out with people, she would start making up rumors and accuse me of having talked bad about other people. Jessica was also really promiscuous, but I never judged her for it. I supported her in whatever she wanted to do, like hang out with older boys, like much older boys. And one day she came to me and said that she was pregnant and that she was planning on having an abortion. 2 months later, she came out and said the same. Part 2 of Toxic Best Friend. TikTok deleted this, don't know why. So my best friend comes to my house having had 2 abortions in 1 month at this point, and she was upset, she was crying, she felt sick, she had nausea. I gave her medication like ibuprofen or something. I didn't know what to do. I was a 13-year-old child. And then she told me that she was in love with me and that she didn't know what she would do if I didn't love her the same way back. At this point, my hands were shaking, my knees were shaking. I didn't know how to help her. The thought of her being sick at my house and her family not knowing was making me feel horrible. The fact that I hadn't told my mom at that point made me feel horrible. So I went and I told my mom. She called her family right away, and they came to pick her up. They took her to the hospital right away. My mom and I were checking on her every single day during the time that she was in the hospital, calling, finding out how she was. The next week, okay, so people were judging me in the last video because I snitched, but I was 13, you guys. What would you do if you were 13 and your friend was sick in your house? Toxic best friend story time part 3. So this week at school was horrible. I show up and there are so many things written on my locker. Nobody knew. The principal had it all cleaned up. The guys were boys were being really aggressive with me, writing me letters, threatening letters. One boy tried to push me up against a wall and tried to kiss me. I didn't let him, but that was that first time that had happened. And I had already been bullied a lot at this point, so I wasn't too surprised, but I was like, why would she be doing this after telling me that she loved me? Right. It also didn't help that the principal made it a point to come to my class and interrogate everyone about the locker situation. No one spoke, but it made me even more of a target. I was already so bullied at this point. I was dying. And I never really saw her after that. Her parents flew her back to Pennsylvania because this all happened in Nicaragua. All I know is that she's a stripper now, and she still tries to contact me on Instagram, and my brother's on social media. They don't pay attention to her, and I know that she's had trouble with. Story time of when my best friend set me up to get sexually assaulted.
I was 13 at the time, and I didn't have many friends in this school because I was bullied a lot because I was a model and I came out on the local newspaper and in magazines and stuff like that. I also was really afraid of people not liking me, so I never stood up for myself. Anyway, this one really popular girl in my class decided to befriend me one day, and I was really appreciative and I really liked her, and she was kind of like the queen bee, the mean girl. She had all the control over the guys, and I was like, I want to be like that, but I was never able to be like her because I just didn't have the balls. Anyway, so at this point we were like friends for about 2 months. I would go over her house, she would come over to mine, but she was never really like a best friend. She was like a friend to my face, but then like I would find out she was talking bad about me. So anyway, she invited me to her house one day, and I show up and there's all these like older strange boys that I don't know about. Come back for part 2. Part 2 of my best friend setting me up. So I'm in her house with a bunch of strange boys and 3 girls from my class, so I at least knew some of the girls that were there. We were in her garage and the door was closed and we were all playing ping pong. Suddenly, everyone runs out and they all leave me alone with one of the boys. They close the door and they lock it, and I could tell that they locked it, so I quickly ran toward the door and he stopped me and he began telling me that he really liked me and that he had noticed me around school and if I wanted to be with him. And then he started trying to kiss me and do other things to me, but I pushed him away. I ran toward the door and my best friend was right there on the other side, obviously listening. And then she opens the door and she's like, calm down, relax, because at that point I was hitting the door. And then she basically accused me of lying and overreacting, and then I just ran.